And then somebody said, you know, most people come to York to look at the medieval cathedral and the medieval city, and it's a medieval place. Surely there should be somewhere like Jorvik for the Middle Ages, where you can actually go and step back into the Middle Ages. And so the Trust devised a scheme here to create in a surviving medieval building a semblance of medieval life. So that was the theory behind it, and we then looked around for a place in which you might do it. And as it happened, this, which was a series of buildings, several of them had breeze block fronts or brick fronts or modern fronts, and there was an enormous amount of internal subdivision. These were actually recently purchased by a local developer who wanted to turn them into prestige offices. And I realised that there was here the core of a fine set of medieval buildings. Didn't know quite what it was. And I went to see Richard Wright, who was the developer concerned, and said, Richard, you don't really want to turn this lot into prestige offices, do you? It's a fantastic medieval building. And he said, oh, tell me another, Peter. And I said, well, come and have a look at it. And we went round, and it was very clear, and he had his own specialist look at it too, that it really was a lot here, that behind the breeze blocks and behind the bricks and so forth actually represented most of complex of medieval buildings that we knew from documentation had been occupied in the 15th century anyway by one of the Lord Mayors of York.
Welcome to Barley Hall, our reconstructed timber-framed medieval townhouse, which first opened to the public in 1993. Barley Hall has been reconstructed and dressed to look as it might have done during the reign of Richard III, and specifically when William Snawsell and his family were in residence. William Snawsell was an eminent York citizen, an alderman, a goldsmith, and at one point in his career, Lord Mayor of York. On arrival at Barley Hall, you step into its courtyard, now known as Coffee Yard, and part of a public right-of-way connecting Great Plain and Stonegate, but originally enclosed within the property. And it's on arrival here that you could get some clues as to the history of this remarkable building. And this model by Arthur Fleetham shows us what the 14th century chamber range might have looked like when it was first built and furnished. This model represents the 6 original bays that constituted the chamber range at Barley Hall. Of those 6, the four rearmost at the Great Lane end of the building have survived. The building at its Stonegate end has been abbreviated. The structure was built with timbers that were cut down around about the year 1361, and the chamber range was originally built as a townhouse for the canons of Nostell Priory. You can see, thanks to this cutaway, that we have dressed the great chamber to look as it might have done when the canons were in residence, and you can see the fine bed that's been set up for the prior, and a truckle bed for his companion. There's a wall hanging, and all of the other features and fixtures to make this a comfortable space, the very best in 14th century city centre living. You can see that the Great Chamber is a prestige area within the building because it's 2 stories high, 2 stories within a 3-storey structure. You can also see that the roof has been cut away to reveal the crown post roof trusses and other roof beams. This would have been a really spectacular sight for any important visitors entering the Great Chamber via the external staircase, and means that the Great Chamber was a place where the prior and his associates could deal with the most important business matters and with their most important visitors. Later in the medieval period, the canons of Nostell Priory began to complain of extreme poverty, and it was clear they could no longer afford to maintain their splendid medieval townhouse. They began letting it out to a series of people who lived here, and those people made their own additions and changes to the building. So for instance, here we are in a 15th century dining hall that really is splendid. You can see the raised platform behind me, and that's where the most important diners would have eaten. And there are tables ranged along either side of the hall where less important people or people of a lower social status would have sat to eat on grand dining occasions. On this side of the Great Hall, you can see some of the original late medieval timbers. You can also see this glass partition here, and beyond it, the original screens passage that has now become an alleyway, the alleyway that connects Great Lane and Stonegate. And you'll often see foot traffic moving up and down this alleyway outside. Here in the centre of the Great Hall is a hearth. This is an original medieval hearth of brick and tile. It's not originally from this site. It was lifted from another excavation that was done by York Archaeological Trust in York, and it was moved here to replace it in this ideal setting for it. And it gives a sense really of how smoky a dining experience it would have been here in the Great Hall in the 15th century. There is an opening in the roof above for smoke to escape. So if you look up, you can see where the smoke would travel, and there is a ceramic pot on top of that opening to keep out the elements. But I think it would probably have been quite dark and smoky if you imagine dining in here with your tallow candles and the room gradually filling with smoke from that central fireplace. Also above me is a wooden boss carved with the shape of barley corn, and that's to commemorate Maurice Barley, who is the first chairperson of York Archaeological Trust, after whom Barley Hall has been named. So the archaeologists from York Archaeological Trust who worked on this site found evidence in the ground here of a tiled floor, and these tiles have been created using authentic medieval techniques to lay this tile floor that we have here, and they were all made by the potter John Hudson, who also worked on creating the roof tiles on the roof of the building as well. As you look around in the room, you can see the level of detail that has gone into the reconstruction here, including the painted wall hangings that hang on each of the walls. Thank you for visiting Barley Hall with us today. It really is a remarkable survival from York's medieval period. We hope that you can visit for yourself very soon.